beginning to engage in the hospitality industry, which has obviously been so impacted. What kind of experiences do you see from Mastercard that your customers are actually going to want to engage in this kind of new era of travel?
That's a great question, Fiona. I think, like with all good marketing, it starts with insights. And our promise is connecting people to priceless possibilities. And that connecting people part has become much more compelling since the pandemic began, whether it's people spending more time with the people than they thought possible, people who have careers spending more time with their children, people not seeing their friends and family or their relatives that are far away but close to them in the everyday. And so more and more we see people wanting to share those experiences, the things that money can't buy, those priceless experiences are becoming very important. And then priceless means more and more different things to different people. We track what we call the passions a lot, the passion points.
Yeah.
And globally, travel is always number one, always across the world. But in the pandemic, we saw, specifically in Europe, we saw music and culinary rise like never before. They grew the most to be number 1 and 2, along with cinema, which is always up there. Wow. And so one of the things that we tried to design in terms of experiences as people start getting back on the road is, do they want to combine that culinary with their trip? Do they want to, well, that's a classic, but do they want to combine their love of sports or a specific kind of experience with their travel? A very good friend of mine, I was talking to her the other day from Amsterdam. She hasn't seen her mom since lockdown. So but this week, she and her mom went to do a cycling trip across France to taste wine. So they're combining 3 passions in one. They're traveling, they're sports, and it's, and enjoying the wonderful things that France has to offer. So as a brand, yes, we're trying to combine those things and create unique experiences. So if people can't travel that far away, they travel closer to home, they can at least have something magical. One of my favorites is, I'm not sure if you know, close to Athens, there's the Temple of Poseidon in Sunyon.
Yeah,
which is,
I've been, yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's, it's open air, so it's safe. Yeah. And one of the experiences we offer, one of the very first, when things started to reopen for local card holders, was the ability to have dinner with your family at the temple with a private chef. And so, yeah, it's those kind of things for people who've lived in Athens their whole lives, but they can experience Sunyon in a way that's, deeper and just beautiful.
Yeah, actually, it's a good point, because it's almost like, even to your point now, maybe you can't travel as far, maybe now we can't so easily at the moment, fly to Asia or something. But I guess to that point, you can still make a kind of memorable experience kind of near you. How are you seeing like travel like panning out? Are you, like, is domestic travel picking up? What kind of patterns of travel are you beginning to see kind of mapping out as people start to travel again?
Well, we have an economics institute that helps us kind of track certain patterns. And it's an interesting question, because there's 2 worlds. There's the business travel, yeah, and there's leisure. And in the business space, there's always those essential workers who have to travel for their job, to visit a plant or what have you. And instead of coming back every couple of weeks, now people are going 2-3 weeks to the same location, taking care of everything and spending a bit on leisure. The small and medium enterprises, that travel's picking up quite a lot. So that's one that's coming back quite quickly. And one of the main reasons for that is, unlike a big company, they don't have internal sales meetings. They don't have that much of the additional big kind of T&E spend. So they have to see their customers. That's the way they've always been, very lean. But there's so many small and medium enterprises in Europe that makes a real difference. What we see a little bit taking some time to come back is corporate travel. It's taking a good, 3 to 4 months lag. And it's not definitely not because people don't want to travel. But I think also, and maybe some marketers on the phone can also appreciate this, we have to manage expenses as we get out of coronavirus, and that TME line is attractive for finance. So it's
a big question, I think, isn't it? Is like, will corporate travel at that? I mean, you're right. I think SMEs, because they always talk about, don't they? They do business with people, not companies. SMEs, so they need that connectivity. But for the big corporations, in a sense, Zoom has enabled meetings of scale. You can actually do a conference for 10,000 people if you want to, in a sense, without all having to fly to Vegas or wherever maybe in the past you would have. So it is an interesting question, isn't it, about what do you think will happen to corporate travel?
Exactly. You're spot on. So the future of work and the future, especially of events, is going to be interesting because even in our space, like, how do you create? Is it when you're face to face, that's the time that you're going to designate to take a trip to see people to brainstorm when you're creating a big idea, and then the operations can be done virtually. And that's exactly right for business meetings, especially the B2B side. The scale that you reach, the lack of people having to get on a plane, go somewhere, come back at night, etc. And the flexibility it provides for speakers as well. You can have, so there's an amazing analyst that I talk to all the time, and he's in Singapore, and I used to see him once a year. Now we call on him all the time for travel insights. And so, it's that flexibility and that scale of digital, I think, is here to stay. But corporate travel will come back. It just will be redefined and reskinned. And I think we're all trying to think of, how do you get the best of both when things come back?
Yeah.
Networking, creativity, plus the digital scale, flexibility, economies, etc.
Yeah, it's kind of balancing, isn't it? The access, to your point, and like the kind of globality that actually has been the benefit, isn't it? We've all worked across time zones and global teams this last year, but it is fantastic to see people and go to new places. Yeah. I know you mentioned when we chatted earlier this week about that you started to look as well about a new sort of segmentation about why are people starting to travel? Because I think one of the things you talked about, like your friend, like you go to see your mom, but you want to combine your passion point. But what are you kind of seeing as like the reasons that are helping people like start traveling again?
So I think one thing we call escapists, a segment we call escapists.
I think I'd like to be one of them. That sounds great.
I think many of us have an escapist inside who come out every once in a while. These are people that just need a break for 3 or 4 days. They've saved quite a lot of money during the pandemic. And I mean, not huge amounts, but amounts that would have gone to a high price ticket, air travel ticket, or high for them. Yeah. And so instead they're traveling locally, and they're spending more on culinary or on health and well-being or relaxing or whatever it is. Those are really those are rising, I would say, from before pre-pandemic levels. Those people are traveling more. There are also the adventurers, the people who have always been outdoorsy, and now is better than ever because it's safe, you don't have to worry about it, and people have been confined, so it makes a lot of sense. And at the same time, there's a blended group that blends with the leisure and the travel part, which are the visit families and relatives who I was talking about earlier. Yeah. Many folks, at least even still for the time being, even though we're kind of in a semi back to normal state in some places, they don't need to be in the office right now. And so they can work kind of anywhere. And So instead of visiting their parents who they haven't seen for a while, or their relatives or what have you, they'll stay 4 to 6 weeks in that place afterwards. And they're not on vacation, but they're not in their home base. They're extending that. And based on what is priceless to them, they'll be the adventure, or they'll be the luxury aficionado, et cetera, in their own personal time, and blend that spend. I think what is not coming back yet, a little bit like corporate travel in the leisure space, is those pure luxury travels, high net worth travel. Folks who typically go, I don't know, to an island on their own or something. I mean, I'm talking about folks really look for that super 7-star experience, because many of them have second homes.
Yeah.
And they want to feel safe. And it's not exactly easy to get to Mauritius or Fiji or whatever right now.
Like a private jet. Yes.
Exactly. So maybe that's even complicated. Who knows? So that's taking a little bit of time to come back, as is mass market kind of deal negotiators, people who want to get 4 nights for free, or a significant discount on their cars. That the prices aren't helping them right now, and so they've turned into more of those staycation kind of travelers, that first segment. And that's why you see some countries like Spain, Italy, Germany, Belgium, France, it's very hard to book something right now, because those people are staying put, and they're spending a bit more on things they wouldn't normally spend in, like hotels and culinary, etc. But they're not spending on so much the travel, and they're driving their own car, or
yeah, no, we were talking actually one day about like transportation, to your point, intra-Europe travel. It's kind of like high-speed trains, or as well as flights as well, but people driving as well. So like the way people are traveling. But it's interesting, isn't it, this notion of like almost like your savings upgrade, like you saved some money, but now you upgrade, but what you're upgrading it on, to your point, is a bit different. I guess for Mastercard, you see everyone spend in that sense, so you kind of know what categories and people are starting to really engage with.
Yes, and also we pull from economic data as well, from domestic economic data. Like we see actually the U.S. personal consumption expenditure, households have saved 17% in excess savings in 2021. In Europe, that the highest savings are actually in Belgium.
Well done, Belgium.
with 13%. And then the UK with 10%, Germany 9%, France 9%. So that's a lot of pent-up spend. And again, how people are spending in things they've become more aware of, spending more time with the people they care about, spending time taking care of themselves physically or mentally, or relaxing, like 1970s vacation, like they used to do, that kind of.
No, I do think it'll be interesting to see like, will the wellness sector, I mean, obviously spas and stuff have grown enormously as a travel sector in last year, but will the kind of wellness sector, to your point, I mean, I personally quite like the idea of being up a mountain in Austria with someone massaging me, that sounds to me like quite a good vacation post like this experience. But I think it will be interesting to see what sectors grow over time, because to your point, what kind of experiences will people seek? The workation idea, though, that you talked about is really interesting, isn't it? Because as people will maybe, to your point, combine seeing family plus working, because I guess working is probably going to be more flexible for a while, certainly, isn't it? Or maybe long term, in terms of people going to the office. Do you think that would be something that you would at Mastercard seek to do, like partnerships with merchants and hospitality, and see as a growth area?
Absolutely. And I think many sectors will benefit from also a hiring and diversity perspective, having a more flexible, less location specific, less rigid hours, being able to accommodate people who have children and work or single families or what have you, and or just not living in the center of London because that's just where they can't afford it necessarily, but being very creative and maybe being in Manchester and coming to London twice a week, or for those brainstorming sessions, putting it in an agency context. So I do think that there will be opportunity there. I think there's also a way of reconfiguring what works for people, what makes them happy at work, what makes them the most productive, and what's that tipping point of work-life balance. There was a campaign that ran in Canada recently, and they were trying to get people to get back to travel. And one of the most interesting insights was that 40% of Canadians don't take vacation at all.
Well, really?
Yeah, so they were targeting people. It was super funny. They were targeting people on search, saying, "Is this your only break you have right now?" Or, you know, so yeah, you need an intervention. So yes, I think people are taking their self-care and just more aware of what makes them productive. I think. And this is hypothetical, but I do think people's sense of time has changed. And where we were fragmenting our time amongst many devices and watching many different things and multitasking, I think somehow the pandemic kind of made us all pull back a bit and be just more considered in how we work, how we live, how we relax. And I think that can be powerful for an experience when you do travel as well, because after many months of not necessarily seeing the world, that's also really powerful.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point, isn't it? Because in a sense, people's kind of curiosity to travel, I guess, has in part been fed, like, you know, like actually travel documentaries on every, I think, TV channel, Netflix, everything have had incredibly high viewership, haven't they? Because we've like virtually been traveling, you know, to kind of feed our minds and our spirits. But I know Mastercard, you have a lot of partnerships. So how do you think as well, like that, we talked a bit about like, you know, virtual, physical combination of experiences, but how do you think as well partnerships might boost travel and hospitality over the kind of coming months and with you for Mastercard?
Well, I mean, there's many different ways. One way is working directly with municipalities and cities and governments in helping the corridors that are active, the travel corridors that are picking up, making sure that people have as connected travel as possible, keeping it simple for them, stimulating and supporting the small and medium enterprises that thrive on travel, that make the backbone, you know, the majority backbone of the European economies thrive, helping them be sustainable. Adding a sense of peace of mind to travelers with our products. In the debit space, it's clear, it's everyday payment, it's become contactless, it's something people are very comfortable with. When you travel, sometimes credit is more used, and other services like Pay by Bank app are just more local. But I think in order to get to a better sense of ease, bringing all the services of cybersecurity and all of the services that we can offer to people's peace of mind for all our products is what we're trying to deliver on.
I guess during the pandemic, you've almost become like the ultimate insurance for people, to your point. I mean, they've really relied on their Mastercard and, you know, your category to kind of give that extra feeling of insurance, haven't they, really? So it's been quite a burden in a sense and a responsibility.
Yes, and there were many parts of our society which were already very tech savvy, but there are certain segments that have shifted behavior. I would say 15 years of behavior in really 12 months.
Yeah,
and with that increased awareness of digital, with that increased awareness of being digitally included and being online and the only way to get a vaccine is online, all those things, comes a heightened awareness of cybersecurity.
Yeah.
And because the world has shifted online, more cybercrime has shifted online. And now I think people are more aware that the value a network can bring, an ecosystem like a Mastercard, an ecosystem of the financial construct that's around that, the tech companies that guard the rails, that's become very important to people. And maybe before the pandemic, either people knew, but it was not top of mind, or they had no idea. And so now with security in all aspects online being more prevalent, I think that's also something people value.
And I know Mastercard have done some programs to help people who, to your point, like my 80-year-old father joins his friends on a Zoom each week because they don't see each other. So, but I know like booking travel for my father is actually always quite daunting digitally. So it's not second nature to him, but he has to do it now, to your point, because there's no other way. So I know you've run some programs to help all groups feel included in being able to book their travel. And do you want to talk a little to that?
Yeah, so as a company, so obviously causes and supporting the Mastercard Foundation, which supports billions of people with health and things like that, are very important. So CSR has always been there. But as a company, we believe that we need to do well by doing good, or do good by doing things well. So in the line of the business, how can we help people? Not as a separate CSR thing, but as a company, as a standing operation. And in Mastercard, not the foundation side, but within Mastercard, one of the things we've been focusing on for many years, but especially now, is digital inclusion. And that's helping unbanked or underserved communities that aren't necessarily online come online, have not be experts, but have the basic skills of how to protect themselves online, how to protect their finances online, how to stay safe, how to have an identity even. Even in Europe, there's places that need that. And definitely within Europe, there are segments who have just needed to accelerate in that journey out of necessity. And so we had a wonderful campaign that our UK team created. It was called Nobody in the Dark. It was at the beginning of the pandemic. It was for people who just didn't have that much digital education, and giving them advice, giving them education, giving them the tools to get online, to feel safe. And just last week, July 5th, I think it was, so 10 days ago, I think it was, or at the beginning of last week, we announced that program for 1 billion people.
Wow. So
we announced Nobody in the Dark for 1 billion people to get people financially included by 2025.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. Yeah, we're proud of that.
So I guess as you start to think about, like, you talked about, you're obviously a critical part you do is helping the merchants, helping the SMEs, but I know you obviously run marketing and communication. So obviously in your role particularly as well, you're also looking at how can you do innovative partnerships that can talk about Priceless, but also support travel and hospitality. So have you done any kind of like spaces in that area over the pandemic?
Yes, and that's a great question. So I think one thing that myself and my team are very proud of is that we were able to support our partners through the pandemic, and it meant a lot to us before the pandemic to have the privilege to sponsor some of the properties we work with. But it in a way it meant more these past couple of years because they are people's passions. So for example, being a sponsor of Cannes Film Festival, which is a generator of culture for the world, which shows films for many people who don't have a voice, or the most quality films in the world, or the most wackiest films in the world. And also
it's always quite varied, it's quite varied.
Everything. Yeah. And being able to support them, being able to extend that reach was very important. We also sponsor Venice. So in Berlinale, every time, before the pandemic, we would have what we call a masterclass, which is typically the creators of film, the filmmakers who write, direct, cinematographers who create the world of cinema. Wim Wenders for Berlin, for example, partner with us so that we train the next generation of filmmakers. So we would have a session where we would get all these different points of view, and there would be people that inspire these film students, and we would reach out to thousands of film students also through streaming or through programs of each festival that they have, like Berlinale Talents, to take filmmakers who don't have that many means to the next level, give them coaching, give them connections, give them whatever. And last year in Venice, which was the first one that came back, we did it all online.
Yeah.
So we continued doing the master classes, but they were virtual Zoom calls, and we streamed out to the film students across Italy. And we continued the same approach, and we reached 80 million. So we got a big within the cinema space. So that's very important, is to continue to sponsor these great passions people have, and to be with them in a time that it's not so easy, and to prioritize that because it matters. UEFA Champions League, another huge.
Well, a sore point for all England Brits at the moment. I'm Scottish, but even I supported England.
Oh no, I know. Well, here in Spain, you can hear the whole building groaning the song, and it's a passion. It's a real passion.
Definitely passion. Definitely, yeah.
And even though this season we were still in the pandemic, it was a very hectic season, a very emotional season. It was the Super League and all of that. So we took the opportunity to use the platform, for example, to have different points of view, to have, of course, sponsoring the event and having it reach out and all of that, but with the UEFA Foundation, having kids that aren't going through the best times in their lives or what have you. We had screens, huge live LED screens with the players as they walked onto the pitch, the semifinals and the final, and they were saying hello to Messi or what have you, and it was kind of like a Make-A-Wish moment, which is lovely. And last year, when we didn't even know if there was a final at all, we did a partnership, we did an activation with TikTok, and it was called Priceless Wave. So you had to do a Mexican wave. You could do it, with yourself, with your friends, with your beagle, with whoever you wanted to, and you'd put it up on TikTok, and you'd get the Mastercard Sonic and the frame. And we typically get exposure to viewers who watch UEFA, etc. For 1 billion, like any sponsor. But with that one activation, we got 2 million views and 300,000 waves. So it was a way of bringing a moment of joy. Obviously, a TikTok wave for a few seconds isn't the same as watching hours and hours of football, but we extended it. We gave people a moment to just celebrate the beautiful game. And so it's things like that I think are interesting. Another platform that people couldn't necessarily attend very much last year was the French Open, Roland Garros.
Yeah.
And it was the time of Black Lives Matter that was happening in America. It was at the beginning, and so because people couldn't join physically, we asked Billie Jean King to interview Naomi Osaka, who's our brand ambassador. And at that time, she was wearing the mask and making it about about, people being heard. And so that was a way of engaging people online to Roland Garros, but in a way that's meaningful, and also in a way that tennis stands for, which is gender balance and championing that with someone like a Billie Jean King, who is an icon of that.
Total icon, yeah.
Yeah, so it's coming up with things like that initially were more like digital moments to more digital content, each time a bit more meaningful. And as we transition back, how do we make a hybrid of those things?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point. I mean, I guess Mastercard, you've been about Priceless for a long time. So I guess these examples you're talking about is almost how do you make Priceless experiences in all sorts of different channels, just to your point, all sorts of different segments. I mean, I know we're probably about to wrap up, so I'm going to look at questions. But do you think like you'll very much want, as we hopefully get to travel again, that you'll want to keep these more like using technology, using partnerships to kind of give the scale as well as the physical? Is that something you see at Mastercard will be kind of part of your future mix?
Absolutely. And I come from a high-tech space. So I know technology can bring a lot of human meaning. And so how do you keep the good parts of that connection that's virtual? And especially if it's considered, and it's really hits at the heart of what people think are priceless, which is a little bit different. So you have to personalize a little bit. But at the same time, when people have the luck to be in person, how do you make that absolutely amazing? And that's cool.
Yeah. So I'm seeing a couple of questions coming in. So there's one here which is like, I think you have a great opportunity to speak to your consumer with real empathy, as if you're walking in their shoes. How are you kind of pursuing the consumer that way to kind of really understand where they're at and what their kind of needs are?
So in a way, what we try to do is we try to support consumers with our products and services in a way, especially more than ever. I mean, it's always been part of our offering, but in the pandemic, in a way that was seamless. Just being there, being convenient, being contactless, being easy, being reliable, being available, being like somebody, like the question is phrased, accompanying them with our product, and then delighting them with a moment, yeah, or with something unexpected. One thing that we tried to do as well, as much as possible, like many brands, is support small and medium businesses locally, which I think will hopefully maintain because of all the push towards sustainability and organic and all of that. Yeah. And also the pull of consumers wanting more of that. We really tried to champion local, what makes neighborhoods neighborhoods. That was another campaign. And that was another way we tried to accompany people just in an everyday way. And if they wanted to be delighted, we could take them there. But if sometimes they just want you to be there and be safe.
Yeah, no, makes sense. And then there's another question which says, people definitely want to get out and about again, I think, and they want to have the opportunity to be adventurous. I think this is talking to your adventurer theme, and do things with their budget. So I think it's kind of like the notion, I think, of like, how can people kind of maximize, or how can you help people do the most with what they can within their budget? I think, like, how can you enable people to be adventurous, but within different budget levels?
Well, we have different travel rewards, Mastercard travel rewards programs with many, many, many merchants across Europe and across the world. We have different ways of helping people scale and helping people maximize what their possibilities are. For our card holders, obviously, that we also have the Priceless.com platform. So that's a place that they can go. That's a place that they can see some of the great ideas. That's a place also where they can find something, like I was saying, like the Sunyan Temple near Athens. Yeah. Sometimes people have a hard time finding a really unique experience for them. It might be a tiny house in northern Norway for someone. It might be having dinner on the theater the main theater of the Opera House in Vienna. It might be different things. It might be going with your little girl and meeting a ballerina at an opera house. It might be something that's just, going to a game. Different people have different things, but we also try to serve that up. And so if people have something like that already built, it's not expensive. It's something that they can do as a card holder. And that's a magic moment for them and their family. That's also something that, or whoever they're traveling, or just themselves, it's also something that's that we try to help on the budget side to provide those experiences.
Yeah. So I think we're almost wrapping up. But what is your ideal vacation then? What are you looking forward to as a trip when you do that magical trip? I had to share mine with my team yesterday, and I almost started to well up as I was talking about it. But what's your one?
Well, what was yours?
Mine, I used to live in Asia, and I used to flit about tropical islands and stuff. And I think much as I love going home to Scotland, and the Highlands are the most beautiful place in the world, mine was like hallucinating about being on like a tropical beach, powder white sand, sparkling sea, no Wi-Fi, a very cold gin and tonic in my hand, and just your feet, with that feeling when your toes are buried in hot sand and you're about to walk into the sea. I mean, I could just visualize it. So yeah, that was my fantasy trip, I think.
Yeah, no, it's a good fantasy. I definitely had that one. And I, like many people, I think I went through a journey during the pandemic. There was about 6 months in that my bucket list became very important to me. And walking the Great Wall of China with my children was a must. Going to Greece with them, which I hadn't done, which isn't that hard to do, but I just haven't done it. But I think for now, just as a family, being able to go to Spain and dip our toes into the sea and have a G&T and just relax.
Yeah.
I'm
excited. My father's coming tomorrow, so I'm excited about that. So yeah, I think we've reevaluated what's most important. But thank you, Jeannette. That's been amazing. So Diana, I think you're back with us.
I am back. Thank you both. That was a fantastic session. I love hearing how Mastercard is really tapping into the culture and bringing these moments to connect with consumers through moments that they care about. And whether it's tennis or Black Lives Matter and all these various things that people are passionate about, it's definitely a really interesting way for brands to become relevant and meaningful in our lives. And I thank you both so much, and I hope and wish you all well with the travel and reconnecting with families. I know this is such a special year for travel and hospitality. This has been a really great session, and just this whole day of reimagining what travel will look like, whether it's, from these different points of view, from different, from whether it's the city of Venice to Mastercard, and imagining how you're doing this. I know we're all really excited to get back out there and traveling, and I just want to thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. It's a privilege, and thank you, Fiona, and good luck tomorrow.
Thank you so much, Jeannette, and it's great to see you. And thanks, Diana, for asking us.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Diana. Thank you so much.
I just want to say thank you to all of our viewers out there, and we hope that you will join we have another Brand Innovators session later on today at 12 p.m. Eastern for C-Suite and Marketing Leadership. We will have marketing leaders from Coty, Tiger Connect, Expedia, and many more. So thank you everyone for joining, and we hope to see you again soon.